Went to a game with my crush. When we got put on the kiss cam, he refused to kiss me. In a moment of impulse, I turned and kissed the school bad boy sitting next to us. Because of that, his girlfriend ran off, and now he wants me to get him a new girlfriend. Do you think I could do it? I asked, trembling. He glanced at me and smirked, sure, but I don't do veggies. The whole world knows I have a crush on Jack. Except him. Game day, the camera lights hit me and Jack. At that moment, my brain stopped. The rule is, if you're on the kiss cam, you gotta kiss. The whole crowd switched from championship cheers to urging us to kiss. 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 I kept my head down, too scared to look at him. Imagining the magic of him kissing me. Imagining my 3-year crush finally coming true. But cheers turned to sighs, and he stayed indifferent. Kathy, I've always seen you as my sister. Sister? Something in me broke. So, he says good morning and good night to his sister every day. Says miss you to his sister daily. Asks his sister for gifts on every occasion. I don't want to be your sister. I stared at him, determined, but he avoided my eyes. That's when I finally got it. It's not that he doesn't know I like him, he just doesn't like me enough. I loved him for 3 years. He loved his goddess for 3 years. I quickly looked down, tears running despite my efforts to stop them. Friends surrounded us, urging him to kiss me. Kathy's great, you scored. Kiss, people are watching. It's just a kiss, can't hurt, right? Look, she's about to cry. I felt like such a pitiful clown. Maybe it was heartbreak, maybe I just didn't want to be everyone's joke, but I did something I never imagined. Turned and crashed into the handsome guy next to us, kissing the school bad boy. Instantly, the stadium erupted again at the unexpected twist. That minute, my mind was a blank. I forgot all of it later. All I remember are deafening applause, his eyes that could kill, and a very bouncy feel. Still lying here? He sounded mad, I got scared. Wanna spend the night? No, I'm trying to get up. Sensing his anger, with a crying face, I said quietly, legs gave out. He seemed stunned, said nothing, just grabbed me with one hand and plopped me back in my seat. Then, angrily kicked a chair. You owe me a chair, he said, pointing at the cracked chair when he left. I barely glanced at it, feeling doomed. I think I messed with someone big. I'm so done for. As the game ended, Jack was inexplicably mad and just left me. I chased after him, but he questioned me. When did you start hanging out with guys like that? Kissing him in front of a whole stadium? Are you crazy? Tattoos, clubbing, fights, a thug, you're into that? What I'm into, he knows well, but he always pretends not to. Fine, I'm into that, I don't want to embarrass myself more in front of him. Just let him go fast. If he stays any longer, I might lose it. Jack got so mad his face went pale. As we argued intensely, a group of guys walked over. One tall one suddenly doubled back and casually said, "Who said you like me?" Looked up to meet a pair of cocky eyes. It was the guy I kissed earlier. Hands in pockets, a cigarette in his mouth, head tilted back, too bad boyish that I wanted to hide. I wanted to hide behind Jack. But Jack just pushed me away. You were so brave earlier, why hide now? I never thought Jack would ditch me, leaving me with these guys. Seeing Jack's angry back walking away, my heart sank. Now that your prince is gone, should we sort out our issue? A voice over me snapped me back. Do we know each other? I started shaking. Had to play dumb. My upbringing was different, I knew dyed hair guys, but blue streaks were new. I regretted it, all game boldness vanished. He stood there, sneering. Forget it, Edward, she's scared of you. Yeah, it's not the first time some girl kissed you. Let it go. Let's go, Missy, he's just drunk. Don't mind him. His buddies probably saw I was about to cry and asked him to let it go. He gave them a look, and they shut up. Let it go? He laughed slowly. How's this come off? He pinched his cigarette, pointing at his bright lips. I swear it was my 999 lipstick. I froze a second, reached for some makeup wipes. Stammered, you might want to use this. He stood still, watching me, like he'd engulf me. Go ahead. Don't tell me you want me to wipe it off. His tone was normal, but I was terrified. So, I leaned up to clean it. Looking up, seeing his bright lips and tall nose, the angle was quite intimate. While I wiped, I kept thinking of the kiss, how bouncy it was, making me blush fiercely. Was it my imagination? I saw his Adam's apple move suddenly, scaring me motionless. Wiping a mouth takes this long? He grabbed my hand instantly, a bit impatient. Forget it, toss this for me. Before I reacted, he gave me the cigarette stub and turned away. Heard his buddies chatting again. Why were you so harsh on that girl? You even handed the cigarette to someone else, pulling off such a wild move. Get lost. He shouted, and the group stopped talking, finally disappearing from my sight. I breathed a sigh of relief. Looking down, I realized my palms were sweaty. The next day, my little stunt ended up on the school's confession wall. And it was posted by someone claiming to be his girlfriend, anonymously of course. Something about me being shameless, kissing someone else's boyfriend in broad daylight. Reading the wave of comments gave me a pounding headache. The whole dorm was buzzing with excitement all night because of me. Damn, Kathy, you actually had the guts to kiss Edward. Hey, word is Edward's quite the player, he's got a tattoo on his waist. When he plays basketball, it shows, and all the girls flock to the court. Yeah, I heard it's a string of letters, his ex's name. His ex was foreign, huh? No kidding, look at him, with just an average build, he nabbed her. No wonder he's so harsh on Kathy. She doesn't measure up. I'm speechless. Kathy, you were brave yesterday. How did it feel? What if I said I forgot? Would you believe me? I looked desperate. My roommates were shocked. What a pity. Well, that so-called girlfriend of his is quite something. Edward changes girlfriends so frequently, who knows which one it is. Yeah, what's your plan? I don't know. I just want to bury my head and sleep. Hey, don't be so down. There's always a way to fix things, they comforted me. I'm heartbroken, ladies. How can I even think about fixing this? I'm on the verge of tears. What a mess. You and Jack. Jack doesn't like you. We've told you so many times. You just wouldn't listen. How can you love someone who makes you guess? You fool. I am a fool. Jack thinks so too, right? Thinking back to how he didn't kiss me yesterday and just left me there, it makes my chest hurt. Later, I slept until late afternoon. Just woke up when my roommate said that anonymous girlfriend is now an ex. They broke up. Things have gotten out of hand. Soon enough, Jack sent me screenshots of the confession wall comments about me. Wow, falling for someone with a girlfriend? Read the comments. How you clean this up? Looking at Instagram made me feel cold inside. Jack, you know who I like. Does this amuse you? He just replied with ellipses. Those dots shattered my last hope. Even if he'd said, we're not a fit, it wouldn't hurt so much. But those dots mocked my 3-year crush. After a while, he messaged again, probably because I hadn't replied. Kathy, we don't fit. No one told you to like a jerk. I was speechless and turned off my screen, storming out of the dorm. I found Edward at the basketball gym. His friends were the first to spot me. They whispered, and I knew they were talking about the confession wall. I braved it. Is Edward here? They stopped whispering, nodded toward a door, inside. Thanks. I was a bit nervous, instinctively walking in. Opened the door, no one was there, so I kept going, then I froze. He appeared, wrapped in a towel, as if fresh out of the shower, hair dripping. Meeting Edward for the first time, my curiosity led me to look for his legendary tattoo. "What are you looking at?" His cold voice snapped me back. "Sorry. I covered my eyes with my hand, realizing it wasn't appropriate to look at a guy like that. "Why cover?" His voice came closer. "Not cool." I covered tighter, flashing thoughts of the English letter tattoo beneath those abs. Then my forehead heated up, and I felt something sticky below my nose. "Girl, you're bleeding." His words brought me back. I pinched my nose, but no luck. "Do you have tissue?" I asked, head tilted, embarrassed. "No," he said flatly. Then tossed me a white t-shirt, new. "Use it and toss it." "Okay." 5 minutes later, his friends watched, jaw dropped as I held a bloody t-shirt, walking out with Edward. "Edward, what's up? Moving fast?" "Yeah, so fast I couldn't catch up." "Quit ballin', take care of yourself." I was mortified, wanting to vanish into the ground. "Shut it." Edward threw a ball at them. He was scary. I dared not speak. After scolding them, he was about to leave when I remembered why I came, Edward. Edward grudgingly stopped. "What now?" "About that day, it was a misunderstanding. I never meant to cause a breakup, I'm sorry." I recited my rehearsed lines. Before finishing, he turned slightly. "Breakup? With who?" "Dunno, the bar one?" A friend chimed in. "No, that's old news. Maybe the influencer?" "I think it's the yoga girl." "You all talk too much." Edward was annoyed, trying to recall which one, turning back to me. "Okay, got it. A misunderstanding." He asked, slowly, "How do you plan to make it up?" I nodded quickly. He chuckled lightly. The group laughed along, amused. "Sis, plan to set him up with another girlfriend?" Someone teased. "Huh? Really?" I was stunned. "Aren't you a girl?" "You'll do." "Me?" A group of them waited for a response. I felt a little dizzy. "You think I'm good enough?" They laughed harder, unabashed. "But Edward eats meat, not veggies." "What does that mean?" I was puzzled. He pulled a card, placing it on my head. "Room 208, I'll explain." With that, they all left. I plucked the card from my head. It was a 5-star hotel key card. A hotel key? I stood, stunned. Returned to my dorm. "What's up with you?" "A guy's t-shirt with blood on it?" My roommate asked. "It's so embarrassing. I had a nosebleed and someone lent it to me, then tossed it afterwards." I slumped over the table, feeling hopeless. "Tossed it?" "No way." My roommate picked up the shirt, a couple's t-shirt. "He let you throw it away? Limited edition? He might like you, you know." I couldn't react. "How much is this?" "At least a few thousand." "A few thousand?" My heart skipped a beat. I got up, grabbed the shirt to clean it, then dried it at the dorm manager's place, and headed to room 208 with the shirt. I kept telling myself it was just returning the shirt. But as soon as the elevator opened, I bumped into Jack. We locked eyes and awkwardly looked away. "Why is he here?" "What are you doing here?" he asked first. I used to dream of conversations like this, but now I couldn't handle it. "I'm looking for someone," I said, looking up at him. In just a few days, we seemed like strangers. "What about you?" Picking up a friend, he replied quickly, avoiding eye contact. Something told me this friend was special. After a short silence, we both ended up at room 208. "Who are you looking for?" he demanded. I panicked because Jack didn't like me hanging out with people like Edward. I was scared he'd find out I was here for Edward. I I hid the bag behind me, regretting I came here. The door opened. We both turned around. A girl in a white dress came out, looking like she'd been crying, eyes red. I was shocked. It was Candy, Jack's dream girl. Whatever happened inside didn't concern me, only the way Jack gently held her did. "It's cold out, wear this," he said softly, which pierced my heart. "Thank you." She threw herself into Jack's arms, sobbing. I stood there dazed for a few seconds, until they walked off into the distance. Jack probably realized I was there. He paused a few meters away, glanced back. That look had no warmth, just disappointment. He eventually left, and I chuckled bitterly. So, Jack was here for her. What's your name again? Who are you looking for?" A familiar voice snapped me back to reality. I had almost forgotten someone was at the door. I came to and, no longer in the mood, asked, "Is Edward here?" "Ah. Another brave one, come on in." He let me in, shouting inside, "Here comes another fearless one." I was a bit startled, hesitating on entering. In the end, I figured leaving might mean running into Jack, so I braved myself to walk in. Inside, 4 guys were playing mahjong. On the couch next to the automatic mahjong table lay someone, hair covering his face, with a prominent nose and red lips visible. "Edward, wake up, another one for you, don't scare her." The guy next to him tapped the couch. Edward's eyes opened slightly under his hair, scanning me quickly. I took a step back. He said nothing, closed his eyes, and turned away to sleep again. "He's drunk," a guy said to ease the awkwardness. "He's got a bad temper, so don't provoke him. Come sit." I came to return something, and I should go. I declined. "Don't go. I need to take a call, help me watch the tiles real quick, I'll be right back," another guy said, then left. I don't know how to, I felt dumb. "It's fine, play whatever, it counts for Edward," he said, disappearing. I was left stunned. With one person down, the other 3 stared at me. It seemed I had to step in for a couple minutes. Hesitantly, I sat down. The guys real quick turned into half an hour without any news. I started Googling while playing, losing everything. My forehead was damp with sweat from nerves. What do I do? I was about to glance back at the sleeping Edward when I felt warm breath near my ear. A hand with a cigarette reached from my side, picked from my tiles, and swiftly played one. Startled, I shivered, turning to look. His lips were inches from mine. "Edward." He stared, calm and cocky, not backing away. I held for 2 seconds, then gave up, starting to turn back. Then he exhaled smoke, fogging my face, making me cough instantly. I panicked, blushing fiercely. "Edward, you awake?" A guy asked. "Don't scare the girl." "Scared already?" He raised his eyebrows, grinning, relaxing into the couch. A cigarette in one hand, the other casually behind my chair like he was holding me. "Scared but still came?" He teased, his laugh filled with danger. Quickly, I stood. "I came to return the shirt." "Return? Trying to hit on Edward, aren't you?" A guy hooted, and they all laughed. I waved my hands nervously. "I'm not." "No need to be shy, many tried this trick, but you're the only one who wasn't kicked out." Laughter again. I turned to face Edward. "I'm going now." "No way, if you leave, this game won't work." Another guy complained. "He's awake, you can play with him." I hinted at Edward with my eyes. Edward kept on smoking, silently watching the spectacle. Sensing my discomfort, he gave me a quick glance, saying carelessly, "You play." "Why?" I asked, puzzled. "Because," he sighed a breath of smoke, "I don't feel like it." "Pretty lady, you're kind-hearted, just fill in a bit till he's back." Someone asked. "Yeah, you've lost so much, win some back. Let Edward coach you." I really should go. Or I won't get back to my dorm. I waved, starting to leave. Doors are closed. Edward calmly commented from behind, looking at me meaningfully. I paused, quickly checking my phone. 11 o'clock. Damn, playing cards got me so stressed, I forgot to check the time. Play a bit longer, Edward'll get you a room next door, no worries. They tried to reassure me. I looked over at Edward. He sat leisurely, listening to the chatter without a word. Like a wolf waiting to strike. Hesitating for a moment, with no other choice, I sat back down, deciding to finish the game and find a room myself. Turning around, I found Edward still watching me. I suspected his eyes hadn't left me, ever blunt. Can you not stare at me? I whispered, taking the chance while others were drawing tiles. Huh? He stared at me, like he was waiting for me to say something else. His gaze freaked me out. You look at me like you want to eat me, I whispered, trying not to let anyone else hear. He kinda cracked a smile for a split second, but quickly got serious again and said softly, is that okay? My mind blew up. Did he just say what I think he said? I spun around, scared to even talk to him again. I couldn't focus. My hands were shaking as I played cards. His words kept echoing in my head, is it okay to eat? After 2 more rounds, I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. I pushed away the last of my chips like I'd just conquered something big, and stretched. Can we stop playing now? I asked quietly. A little longer. I'm sleepy. Everyone else seemed wide awake, which really annoyed me. Sleepy? Nap? One guy glanced at me, then at Edward, almost speaking up but holding back. Sure, absolutely. A couple of the guys caught on and stood up immediately. I looked back at Edward, who remained totally unfazed, not explaining anything for me. Get out of here. The guys didn't even grab their coats before rushing out. When will you pay us? One guy dared to ask. When did I play cards with you? Why ask me for money? Edward chuckled from his spot. Edward, come on, we can't ask the girl for it. He didn't reply, just stood up. Before he could speak, they bolted outside. Bang. He gently shut the door and leaned against it, looking at me. So, how much do I owe? Maybe I can pay? I was so frustrated. I never should have believed it was all on Edward if I lost. Sure, you pay. He smiled. Is it a lot? I was down. Not too bad. He sounded patient, but all I wanted to do was cry. Can I pay in installments? Felt like I got scammed. He stopped talking, lit a cigarette, and said, I told you to play, are you dumb? You're terrible. I got it, I was bad, but I asked about every card. He agreed, didn't he? You even know how to play? I realized he set me up to lose. He smirked again, if I play, they'd all lose so bad they'd pee themselves. Then why didn't you play? Why did you make me do it? I was furious, seriously, who does that? To teach you a lesson. He put out the smoke, walked over, and pinned me against the door, about to kiss me. In the nick of time, I turned my head. His kiss landed on my hair. No kiss? He teased, you playing with me? No. My voice shook. I came to tell you I've thought over what I said about being your girlfriend. Just pretend I never said it. He sounded relatively sane. I returned your clothes too, can we just drop it? My head was a mess. You say it's over and it is? Don't mess with me, I have no patience. I'm not playing. I was really about to cry. Then don't play. He handed me my bag, but yanked me close, my face hit his chest. He leaned down, I shielded my mouth with my bag, terrified. His deep eyes locked onto mine, I'm not a good person, and no one around me is. You better stay away. I nodded frantically. Remember that. He slipped a room card into my hair, then turned and walked away. Don't let me see you again. I don't mess with naive girls. He didn't need to tell me twice. I would never dare meet him again. Too scary. I bolted from the room and headed to the room with the card he'd given me, locking myself in. The next day, back at school, I was lying on my bed, scrolling through Facebook. Out of habit, I checked Candy's page. She had posted, "I'll wait for you to come back." I paused. Obviously, I knew who she was waiting for, her crush. I opened the only comment. Jack, silly. The word silly was so sweet it practically oozed off the screen. I left her page and went to the only profile Candy followed. Still no personal posts, just some sports links. It was Edward. For 3 years, I pitifully surfed between their 3 pages. For a while, I was thrilled when I found out Candy had a crush. Maybe Jack would give up and finally like me. Not a chance. I felt like I'd used up all my youth. He never liked me. Thinking of this, I turned off my screen and unfollowed the 3 from my fake account. Just then, Candy appeared in my dorm. She wore a white dress with heels, looking stunning. Her first words to me were, "You and Edward aren't right for each other. Stay away from him." I was surprised. Never thought Candy would come to me, even after I spent 3 years by Jack's side without her saying a word. For her to come rushing because of Edward? Ironic. "I can give you Jack." She said it bluntly, like she figured my reaction wasn't what she expected, then added, "You like him, don't you?" "He's not an object," I said, half amused. "Besides, I don't like him anymore." "Don't like him?" She snorted. "Don't like, yet you keep liking stuff on our Facebooks?" I was stunned, a chill ran down my back. How could she know? I always used a fake account, every move carefully calculated. She tossed a screen capture at me, and I realized I'd messed up once, liking all 3 of their posts with my real account. Just great. That's between Jack and me. Yeah, I liked him once, but you don't get to boss me around. I can help. Help? I laughed. What about how he feels? Even Jack gets this day, when his so-called goddess decides to hand him off to someone else. I didn't beg him to like me. Candy seemed to think she was justified. Just go. Edward and I have nothing to do with each other, and I won't contact him. I didn't want to argue about it. Using someone else's feelings as bargaining chips. I'm not that shameless. How can you be sure? I was at a loss for words. What more assurance do you need? I got out of bed to see her out. But she suddenly broke into tears at the door. "No one knows Edward better than I do. I'm begging you not to take him away from me." I'm not. How many times do I need to say it? I admit, I was kind of curious about Edward at first, wondering why a goddess like Candy would be into a guy like him. Almost got myself in trouble with that curiosity. Now, I don't dare to be curious anymore. You better stick to your words. She wiped her tears, giving me a fierce look. Slam. I just shut the door, ignoring her. Can't fight, might as well avoid. Jack has occasionally sent me messages the last few days, but I haven't replied. Things have gotten this messy, yet he still sends me good morning and good night texts. What am I supposed to say back? I'm just going through the motions, classes, eating, sleeping. About a week later, I'm in the cafeteria. As soon as I sit down, Jack rushes over, frustratedly asking, "Why are you doing this?" He caught me off guard. What did I do? I had never seen Jack so angry before. I told her we can't be together, but you still went and had her block me? Now she's hiding in her dorm, crying her eyes out. His tone was anxious, probably from worry. Her? I kind of already had an idea. The sad truth is, Jack isn't usually one to jump to conclusions. But now, he's lost his cool, all for the sake of his crush. You know it, you know I like her. I was blank. At that moment, I realized, we're not just not going to be more than friends, Jack and I. We won't be friends at all. 3 years of pining over him, and this is all I get. I'm living a joke, not even worth much in comparison to her one sentence. I didn't. She came to me, saying that she'd give you up for me. Even though I tried to hide it, the sorrow in my voice betrayed me. Hearing the change in my voice, we both were still for a moment. He looked at me for a long time, taking a breath before saying, "Fine, Kathy, just go upstairs and check on her for me. I'm worried about her." And just like that, he stabbed a needle into my heart and twisted it. I moved like a zombie, following him towards the dorms. As we took a few steps, I looked up and saw Candy smiling at me from the balcony above, laughing at the fact that I'm just a tool. That smile hit me hard, and suddenly, all my strength was drained. At that moment, I saw a group of people coming towards us. Some were trying to greet me. Looking up, I met Edward's eyes. He had a cigarette between his fingers, giving me a brief glance without any acknowledgement. I looked down, feeling embarrassed. Whenever he sees me, it's always when I'm such a mess. But after a few more steps, a wild idea popped into my head. Then suddenly, I felt my body turn back, running towards the group. Edward. I ran up to him, looking up at him. He stopped and looked at me, not moving. I went crazy, grabbing him around the neck, trying to kiss him, standing on tiptoe. Being short, I couldn't quite reach. Let go. He lost patience, a warning in his voice. Can you date me? I mustered the courage to ask, and emotion flickered in his eyes. He glanced over at Jack, who'd caught up, warning again, let go. I won't let go unless you agree. I don't know where this boldness came from. What, are you forcing it now? Damn. He was about to hit me. Honestly, I was starting to regret it too. Please. I pleaded, planning to use him for revenge, afraid I'd make a fool of myself. What'll make you let go? The crowd watching was growing, and he was losing patience. You. Kiss me. I trembled, bracing myself for a punch. After a slight pause, he said, so much hassle. I hadn't even fully heard him before he grabbed me single-handedly, pinning my hands above my head, and pressed his lips to mine by the court's fence. Having no experience, I couldn't handle his kiss. What was more terrifying was him deepening it in a second, leaving me breathless. My mind went blank. The world spun. Is that enough? His deep voice cut through the haze, restoring my senses. It's enough. I swallowed nervously. Not really. He eyed me, leaned down again, and kissed me. SOS. Just as I relaxed, I was back at square one, tense. After a few seconds, he finally let go. He took a look at me, then reached for and unzipped my bag, searching until he found my makeup remover pads. Wiping his lips, he put them back in my hand and walked away. Is he serious? This guy's a real jerk. My heart was still racing. There were people all around, talking loudly. I didn't dare look at them. You coming? He turned back after a few steps when I didn't follow, looking exasperated. Probably thinks I'm a handful. Yeah, I'm coming. If I don't, I'll be like a monkey with so many watching. Better not embarrass myself further. I quickly caught up. He didn't hold my hand nor wait for me deliberately, but walked with his boys instead. Kathy. I heard a voice in the distance. Didn't need to look back to know who it was. I clenched my fists, not wanting to listen, but my steps halted. I had to talk to Jack, face to face. I turned around. I have things to do. I can't check on her. Ask someone else. Saying this lifted a huge weight off my heart. Kathy. Jack stood frozen, unable to believe it. I wanted to say more, but something got pulled over my head, a hoodie, making my vision black out. Startled, I was just about to make sense of what happened when my collar got lightly tugged. It was him, dragging me away. In less than half a minute, got me sold out? The voice overhead was low, full of tease. No. Let me go. Knew right away who it was. Getting dragged off so publicly, this was too much. If you keep it up, I'll carry you out of here, got it? His gaze was so intense it sent chills down my spine. I shut up real quick. He half dragged me to the school gate before letting me go. Where to? I whispered. Taxi. Food. He pulled out his phone to call an Uber. His buddy looked at me and hesitated, glancing between us. Edward, where are we eating today? Another guy asked. Wherever. Edward had a bad temper, that much was true. Ask her. He suddenly tossed the question to me, typical women, lots of fuss. Hey sis, you like spicy food or not? The guy was good at reading the room, coming over to ask me directly. Spicy. I answered honestly. Then it hit me, they called me sis, and my face turned beet red. Edward, are you sure about this? The guy looked a bit worried. Edward lit another cigarette. Man, he smokes like a chimney. No, Edward bro, don't get me wrong, I didn't mean it like that, you sure talk a lot. You wanna chat all night? Edward's look was terrifying. It's normal to be scared of him, all his buddies were. I was, too. The car arrived, and he opened the back door first, motioning me to get in. I scrambled in immediately, not wanting to be yelled at. He got in too. The tight space quickly filled with smoke, it was suffocating. I quietly cracked the window, but he noticed. Can't stand it? He rested an arm on the window, watching me out of the corner of his eye. I'm okay. We barely knew each other, I couldn't just say I hated it. Scared of me? He asked again. I had nothing to say. With him being so fierce, how could I not be scared? Pathetic. He shot, then aimed his cigarette at a roadside trash can, flicking it out. That's littering. I blurted before I could stop myself. Don't like that? Wanna tell me what to do? He asked calmly. No. I mumbled. Though his tone was calm, it felt oppressive. I'm just like that, bad, uncontrollable, do as I please. If you wanna change me, sorry, not happening. He seemed all cocky, leaving me speechless. Honestly, I didn't care much. I was just being headstrong and impulsive. Edward was known for changing girlfriends fast, playing hard. None lasted more than 3 months, they said. There was no way I'd be the one to break that record. Nor did I want to. I just forced myself to stop thinking about Jack, and quit meddling between Candy and him. I figured this wouldn't last 2 weeks before he'd ditch me. That was fine with me. I don't want to change you, just be yourself. I set my perspective straight. He should just stay himself, and hopefully dump me soon. You talk well. He smirked, so why do you keep trying to date me? Could I say, it was revenge every time? Obviously not. My brain raced, searching frantically for something nice to say but turned up empty. I managed, you're pretty handsome. He stared before breaking into a laugh. After a bit, he said, don't expect anything from me, I won't follow your lead. Do as you're told and don't go making me a fool. I winced. What if I did? I foolishly asked. He didn't answer, just shot me a murderous glare. I didn't dare say another word. The restaurant was a hot pot place. Spicy. Just what I like. When I was with Jack, he couldn't handle spicy food, so I joined him eating bland meals till I doubted my life. Tonight, finally having my long-craved hot pot, I was so happy I cried. They thought it was from the spice. Sis, I messed up. Should have ordered a half and half pot. Can't even get such a simple thing right, huh? Giving the boss's girl a hard time, you should. The group started berating the guy who ordered. No, it's just that I was so happy to eat it, so moved I cried. They stared at me, dumbfounded. Why cry if it's good? They asked. I didn't know either. Silly. Edward, who hadn't said much, chimed in, shoving a plate of tripe toward me. Not eating? I eyed the tripe, drooling. But Edward barely touched his food all night, just drinking with his buddies instead. I let you eat your fill. He shot me an annoyed look. Unsure why I ticked him off, I just kept eating. After dinner, I was stuffed. They asked where I'd go next. Library. I said, wiping my mouth satisfied. Edward bro, you bagged a bookworm this time. Someone joked. Edward bro's got a new flavor and got bagged himself. Laughter and teasing ensued. I blushed. Enough kidding, zip it. Edward barked. What about you guys? I changed the subject. The bar. Bar? I glanced at Edward, a bit tipsy already. More drinking? Oh, don't worry, sis, Edward ain't drunk, no one drinks him under the table. I was just making small talk. Guess I'm cabbing it back to campus. Have fun, y'all. I said. I'd never been to a bar and didn't plan on starting. In my book, bars were for bad guys, and I couldn't handle that. But then again, Edward did say he wasn't a good guy. Suddenly at a loss for words. All right then, Edward, next round? A guy checked Edward's play. Edward stubbed out his cigarette, booked a ride. Yeah, you guys go ahead. The lively atmosphere took a hit. They were surprised. You're not coming? Got stuff to do. Edward coolly replied. Edward, come on, can't you push it back? Exactly, how'll we enjoy without you? Edward, we'll wait. They weren't having it. Meanwhile, my cab showed up. I'll see y'all later. I waved. Before they could focus back on me, they hastily said goodbye. I'm not allowed to have my own plans? Edward grumbled at them. Then he held my car door open, leaned in, mind if I hitch a ride? His buddies were dumbfounded, and honestly, so was I. But I couldn't stop him, so I scooted over to make room. Edward, you. My brother kept complaining as he looked out the window, while the car sped off. I sat there nervously, secretly wondering if he was about to give me a ride home. Isn't that what couples on campus always do? Boyfriends driving girlfriends back to the dorm. And then, they end up hugging and kissing after a while. The thought brought back the memory of him grabbing my head and kissing me that afternoon. My heart pounded so hard, it felt like it echoed around the entire car. Finally, we arrived at the school, and I got out of the car. He walked over, which made me even more nervous. Was he going to kiss me again? If I refuse, will he be upset? I'm not so sure how to handle it, he's so assertive. The thought of him kissing me again kind of scares me. But, I'm his girlfriend, and he has needs, right? I shouldn't refuse him, should I? Totally overthinking it, I shut my eyes tight when he got close. But a few seconds passed and there was no kiss. I opened my eyes a sliver, and there he was, looking at me, amused. Is that what you were thinking about the whole time in the car? He laughed and asked. No, I said, trying to act normal. He gestured with his eyes toward the path next to us. Me? So, I was just blocking his way. I thought he was going to kiss me, but no. Talk about embarrassing. Okay. I quickly stepped aside to let him through. He walked by, hands in his pockets, so suave. After a couple of steps, something came to my mind, and I called out, Edward. His back was to me, he didn't move. I ran up to him, phone out, can I add you on Instagram? Maybe I can treat you to dinner next time. I figured he wouldn't take money if I suggested going Dutch. Sure, he surprised me by agreeing and let me scan his phone. After adding him as a friend, all he said was, later. Then he disappeared into the night. I stood there with my phone, looking at the name Edward. His profile pic was a black cartoon avatar, classic bad boy vibe. I shook my head, not knowing what was going through my mind. Later, I went to the library, sat down, and grabbed my phone. After thinking for a bit, I sent him a message. "I'm at the library. Thanks for the dinner," with a cute emoji. Just to let him know I got home safely. I didn't expect someone like Edward to care about such silly rituals, but he surprised me by replying almost right away, "Cool." I put down my phone and started studying English vocabulary. I'm prepping for the IELTS in 3 months. Planning to study abroad next semester has always been the plan. I was just hesitant because of Jack. But now, there's nothing holding me back. After my study session, I packed up and headed back to the dorm. Passing by the small grove near the dorms, I saw a bunch of couples snuggled up, making out. My mind drifted off to someone, making me stand there in a daze for a few seconds. Back in the dorm, after getting ready for bed, I noticed a notification on my phone. "Edward?" It was a voice message. Slightly curious as to why he'd send a voice message, I had no headphones, so I put the phone to my ear. It was a bit noisy, possibly from a bar with thumping music. I couldn't make it out, so I turned up the volume. And I heard, "Next time you want to kiss, let me know." Oh man. I got goosebumps all over. It wasn't just me, the volume was loud enough that the whole dorm room was stunned silent for a moment. Then came the laughter. "Kathy, who was that? That was so flirty. Save me." Was it Edward? Are you two progressing that fast? He's quite the smooth talker, isn't he? The room was buzzing with chatter, making my already scrambled head even busier. Ugh, truly S-tier social awkwardness. He's drunk. Just saying stuff. I nervously turned off my phone, my palms sweaty. Drunk words are sober thoughts. Maybe he really likes you. No way, I whispered back. What are you thinking? Guys like him are just players, they just have fun. Yeah, he's got so many girlfriends, the gossip can't keep up. Right, Kathy, don't take it to heart. He's someone to have fun with, he's so handsome it'd be a waste not to, but don't get emotionally involved. I know, I mumbled. I've always known. Ever since I found out that Candy's crush was Edward, I started paying attention to everything about him. He's quite the figure around campus. First, for his looks. Second, for being a player. 10 stories about him, all 10 bad. Getting into fights one day, making a girl cry the next. He screams the word danger. I initially didn't get it, why someone like Candy, a campus goddess, would like someone like Edward. They're just worlds apart. I still don't get it now. Whatever. After getting ready for bed, I lay there trying to focus on my English vocab. But his voice kept echoing in my mind. Maybe when he left, he thought I wanted a kiss, so he said that. Ugh, just kill me now. Even though he isn't around, just one voice message left me blushing like crazy. I buried my face in a pillow, trying to stop myself from thinking about it. It took me until midnight to finally fall asleep. The next morning, with no classes, I planned to head to the library. But my roommate asked, "Aren't you bringing Edward breakfast?" Me? He might not even be at school, and he didn't ask me to. You're completely missing the point. All his previous girlfriends used to wait below the dorm with breakfast every morning. Really? After a few seconds thought, I decided to buy breakfast for him and went over to his building. You up? Can you come down for a bit? I texted him. Clearly, no reply came. I checked the time. It's 9 already, if I wait any longer, I might not find a good spot at the library. I regretted buying breakfast, throwing it away seemed wasteful. Reluctantly, I dialed him up. It took ages for him to pick up. Hello? His voice was groggy. It was the first time I ever called him, and I felt awkward. He sounded pretty groggy. Oops, maybe I woke him up. I got breakfast for you. Can you come down and grab it? I whispered, ready to just toss it. Nope. He was getting impatient. Whoa. That was a firm no, and I didn't know what to say. Skipping breakfast can upset your stomach. Fine, I thought, feeling a tad foolish, and started to hang up. There was silence on the other end, then he said, "Are you annoying?" Well then. I hung up. Delivering breakfast just to get shut down. Being a girlfriend is tough. Yeah, toss it out next time. Stop buying it for me, he said calmly. I sure was being silly. Too bad to waste it. I'll just give it to my classmate. I'm serious, he always asks for snacks at the library. Eating more won't hurt. Seriously, Kathy? You're not listening to me? His tone turned a bit stern. What? I was a bit confused. Why'd he switch up on me like that? He cursed over the phone, I didn't catch it, then said, "Stay put." My heart skipped. Why is he coming down? I hung up and waited by the boys' dorm. Passing guys kept glancing at me, so I turned away, feeling self-conscious. Suddenly, someone lightly tapped my head. Startled, I spun around. Edward. I rubbed my head. Why'd you smack me? Woke me up early for this? He looked at the bag in my hand with messy hair, looking tired and pale. Was it me, or did he look even more handsome, like an annoyed lion? Here, it's yours. You can toss it if you don't want it. I handed it over, avoiding eye contact. He took the breakfast and smiled, "Don't buy any more. But if you must, wait until I'm in a good mood and we live together. Saves the trip." Live together? I was stunned, no, more like shocked dumb. No. We can't live together, we're still. I was so flustered I couldn't talk straight. Do you even want to move in? He looked amused. Was he joking? No. I protested. Of course not. No way I'm off to the library. I'd better leave before he teases more. He's trouble, better keep distance. I'll buy lunch later. He waved me off, good student. We'll see. I ran off. Quite the move. Took me half an hour at the library to settle down. Just as I calmed down, I checked my phone and saw Jack announce on Twitter that he's with Candy. Comments were all congratulations. I paused, took a deep breath, and commented, "Congrats." Head up, and Candy was sitting across from me. Candy. Just announced, and she's confronting me. Her intentions were clear. Are you with him? Did he agree? She asked, suppressing anger. My heart dropped. Life's ironic. She wasn't bragging about Jack but asked about Edward. Did he agree? Ask him. Doesn't concern you now. You. She shifted, then said, being with him means nothing. He'll tire of you within a week. Not my business. I never planned on staying with Edward long anyway. Revenge or a fling, I did what I wanted. Kathy, I warn you not to play. Edward and I grew up together. I know him, and he's just dating to get back at me for breaking up. He only has room for me in his heart, understand? Think you're special to him? Don't be dumb. You'll be worse off than me when it ends. Her words shocked me. I thought Candy had a crush on Edward. Didn't know they dated and split, probably a lot happened. Now I seemed like the one who broke them up. Really put a damper on my mood. Then we'll break up later. I opened my book, tired of her words. You're with Jack now. Isn't it inappropriate questioning me about Edward? Who said I'm with Jack? It's just like Edward, to annoy each other. She boasted. Her mindset shocked me, literally sent chills down my spine. Confidence, sure. But where's her sense? Does Jack know? I asked quietly. Huh. Does it matter? He knows I love Edward. I turned him down, but he still likes me. I was about to explode. There are girls like her? What did Jack ever do wrong? Crushing on my idol for 3 years, only for her to play with him like this? He genuinely cares about you. Don't deceive him. I felt frustrated. Care about him? She shot back. I fumed, speechless. Kathy, let's see who wins, who lasts longer. Want to steal Edward? I won't guarantee Jack's okay. You're crazy. What's this got to do with me? I grabbed my book and left, over it. Her laughter followed. Entering the stairwell, bumped into Jack holding 2 bubble teas. Such a small world. Kathy. I turned, and he called out. Hey. Stopped to greet him. He shifted the teas behind him. Must be for candy, couldn't give me one. Used to be me buying him bubble tea. Leaving already? Not reviewing? He asked, as gentle as ever. I looked down, embarrassed. Yeah, just something to do. All right. He stepped aside to let me pass. Bye. I greeted, leaving without looking back. As I walked around the corner, a voice suddenly called from behind, "Can we still be best friends?" I stopped dead in my tracks. My emotions were all over the place. I didn't reply to him. I just walked away. Could we be good friends? My mind was a mess. For the past 3 years, I have been hanging out with Jack. He's a senior in an integrated bachelor's and master's program, and I often followed him around to do experiments. He was attentive and patient. I often thought, marrying a guy like him would be such a blessing. But alas, we weren't meant to be. Sis-in-law. Passing the basketball court, someone suddenly called me from the crowd. Reflexively, I looked over, and it was Edward and his friends. He stood out in the crowd, wearing a tank top, showcasing his sturdy arms. As soon as I looked at him, he noticed me too, but didn't linger. He just kept playing. Instead, one of his buddies ran over to stop me. You guys playing ball? I paused and greeted him. Yeah. Edward went nuts this morning, said he couldn't sleep, and dragged us out to play. Whoa. Can't sleep, likely because I woke him up. I'm guilty. Playing ball is good for exercise, you guys keep at it, I'm off. I wasn't in the mood to fawn over anyone. Sis-in-law, we're so thirsty. Will you buy us some bottled water? A big guy, over 6 feet, whining at me. I was getting goosebumps. What brand do you want? I couldn't say no. They were all sweating and seemed genuinely tired. Anything will do. The guy grinned. Just then, a basketball came flying and hit the guy square in the head. Ouch. In pain, he clutched his head, yelling, Edward, why'd you hit me? Startled, I jumped back several steps. Then Edward walked over, glancing at me with a condescending smirk, asking lightly, what did he ask you to do? Buy water. Just some water, why'd he hit him? So aggressive. I didn't cuckold him or betray him, why is he so paranoid even about his own buddies? Did you agree? Yeah. Who's your boyfriend, can't tell, huh? Clearly, he was a bit mad. Not out of jealousy, he didn't like me anyway. He was just so macho, with a strong sense of possession. It's just buying water, I intended to buy a crate, so everyone could have some. I explained. A whole crate? Loaded, or just enjoy being a go-fair, dumb? He shot me a glance. I couldn't handle his sudden anger, already in a foul mood. So I reluctantly turned to leave. Fine, I won't buy it, I'm leaving now. Get back here. 2 steps away and he calls me back. What does he want? What? I asked him. Pocari Sweat, orange flavor, chilled. He listed, then added, just 1 bottle. Ordering me to buy him water, only 1 bottle? That's just rude. Okay, I'll get you a separate Pocari Sweat, mineral water for them, deal? I whispered. He turned his face, giving me a look. Who asked you to bother? Why? Why so mean? I'll buy the 1 bottle then. Ugh, he's always so harsh. Feeling wronged, I headed to the shop. Cursing him under my breath on the way back with the drink, I still handed it to him. His buddies stared at me, only one bottle, murmurings ran through them. But he calmly took the drink, tilted his head back, and gulped. Not playing anymore. Finished drinking, he tossed out. Edward, then where to? Yeah, still early for dinner. We just got into the game, you hogged all the shots, and now you're bailing. Edward grabbed his towel, wiped off sweat, and glared at them, who was bragging about a cool cave they wanted me to check out. Cave? Yeah, that one. Edward, didn't you say it was boring, not going? Chatter too much, going or not, whatever. Edward waved it off, then looked at me, wanna go? Huh. Why ask me, not going? They skip class, fool around, plenty of time. I don't. I need to study, just 3 months till exams. Besides, no way I'd tag along with a bunch of guys, I'm the only girl. He stared at me silently. What, embarrassed to hang with someone like me? Not like that. I quickly explained. Then don't bug me, find a nerd to hang with, playing games? Fine, now he was really annoyed. I'm studying, not much time. My explanation was weak. Oh, forget it, okay, how long are we going for? I caved. Don't talk to me. He tossed the ball and walked away. Why is he so hot-tempered? Sis-in-law, he's just like that, don't mind him. Yeah, we're used to it. Sis-in-law, pack some clothes, might need to stay overnight. His buddies came to smooth things over. Going on a trip means staying out, obviously. But I was still torn. Watching his angry silhouette, I decided to go. Be it a breakup or whatever, no need for drama, closure is fine. Later, one of his friends added me on Instagram, said the car was waiting by my dorm. I hurriedly packed a few things and headed downstairs. Turns out, Edward was in the taxi too. Awkward times 10. I stayed silent all the way, not knowing what to say, avoiding eye contact with him. He, on the other hand, stayed busy texting away, with a bunch. If I wasn't mistaken, most icons were girls. Huge text to him, he glanced, replied with a word, oh. Oh. Such a player. Edward. I softly called his name. Yeah. He kept eyes on his phone, not facing me. Can you close the window, please? I'm a bit chilly. The wind was strong, didn't expect this cold. Stuffy in here. He set his phone down, finally looking at me, cold? Come closer then. How can I snuggle up to him? Would that stop the cold? Seriously? But he patted the spot beside, smiling at me, up to you. Is this like giving each other a way out? Thinking about how he's been mad at me the whole way, I feel awkward too. He's already given me a way out, so I have to slowly take it. Still cold? Yeah. He really states the obvious. Does being close even help warm someone up? Where are you cold? My hands and head. The next second, he grabs my hand and naturally places it inside his coat, asking with a straight face, still cold? This isn't right. I try to pull my hand back. Gosh, his roommate and the driver are right in front, and it's so weird for us to be like this in the back. What about now? He puts his arm around me. Edward. I whisper, a warning in my voice, shocked. Emicham, call louder and others might think we're doing something. He says mischievously. What nonsense, I snap, both anxious and annoyed. I'm not afraid of what people might say, but it's unfair since we're doing nothing. I really can't win against him. Luckily, his roommate seems to have fallen asleep in the front. Lean on me and take a nap, I'll wake you when we get there. He stops teasing and continues fiddling with his phone. I'm really a bit sleepy. I'm too lazy to argue with him further. It does feel warmer leaning against him, so I carefully rest my head on his shoulder. Still not light, he chuckles softly. Is he saying I'm heavy? Just as I lift my head to argue, I almost hit his lips, the angle just right. My heart races again. He stops too and looks at me without any hesitation. Watching me makes my heart pound faster. I quickly look away, not daring to hold his gaze. But he's like he's doing it on purpose, leaning down to my ear, whispering, looking at me like that, "Want a kiss?" My brain explodes. How can he always be so free-spirited, saying whatever? Worried he might just kiss me, I bury my face in his coat, feeling a small flutter of anticipation. But after a minute, there's no reaction from him. I peek at him, only to find him focused entirely on his game. Okay, guess I don't even rank as high as his game. What was I even hoping for? Go to sleep, why keep watching? Although his eyes aren't on me, he suddenly says. With that, I actually fall asleep. When we arrive, it's so windy outside. It's cold, and on top of that, I'm wearing a skirt. It's not short, just past the knees, but I can't keep it down. My face turns bright red with embarrassment. I pitifully turn to Edward for help. He glances down an inch, frowning. Wearing something so short to go out, what were you thinking? Trying to tempt me? He laughs, and I feel it might be dangerous. I dress like this usually. I almost cry. Isn't it normal for a girl to wear a skirt? Usually dress like this to tempt your brother? He suddenly gets all grumpy, taking off his coat and tying it around my waist. Don't say it like that, it's really mean. You know it sounds mean, yet you're always sticking to him. He snaps at me out of the blue. I don't even know how to respond. Maybe he knows I've been using him, which is why he's always mad at me. Maybe this trip is the last time we'll spend together. When we get back, he'll probably break up with me. Thinking of that, I suddenly feel at ease. Breaking up wouldn't be so bad. He stopped talking. Then I just silently follow behind him. The cave is so dark, even with lights, it's scary. The whole time, I can't really sightsee, worried I'll get lost. There are so many forks in the path. Then, I get a call from my mom, and I actually do get lost. Because the signal is terrible in the cave, my mom's voice is all breaking up, so I wander to a more open area. After the call, I'm lost. Trusting my memory, I walk further. The further I go, the fewer people there are. And I start to panic a bit. The cave walls lit up by the lights look like something out of a horror film. I try to call Edward using voice calls, but the signal sucks. Sometimes it just disconnects right after connecting, or can't connect at all. Watching too many horror movies has filled my head with creepy thoughts. Edward, I'll wait for you all at the cave exit, okay? I send him a message, but it's got that red exclamation mark, no signal. After I send it, there's not a single tourist around me. As a directionally challenged person, I'm completely done for. My heartbeat speeds up, and I don't dare stop walking. Edward, I think I'm lost. I send that message half-heartedly. Because the previous message hasn't even gone out. After walking a few more minutes, I slip because I'm so scared and fall flat on my face. I end up sprawled out on the ground, both scared and frustrated. Scrambling up, I find my knee hurting horribly, probably bleeding a bit. Sitting on a rock, all alone, looking around, I feel utterly useless. I can't even catch someone after chasing them for 3 years, finally try a relationship, and I'm always scared by him. Now I can't even walk without getting lost. Such a coward. At that moment, everything bursts out, and I start crying. Why are you crying? Suddenly a familiar voice comes from above. Hearing it is like finding a lifeline. I look up, my eyes all teary, thinking about how he lost me made me feel even more wronged. I can't find you guys, I say, pouting, feeling even more wronged. He seems startled by my tear-streaked face, and after staying silent for a bit, he reaches to tousle my hair. I just went to the bathroom and you were gone in a second. What? A bathroom break? My bad, I should have known you'd be such a handful. He sighs helplessly. I look down, saying nothing more. So are we going now or are you resting here for a bit? He asks me. Let me stay for a bit, I explain, let me cry for a bit so I won't look as bad when we get out. He seems a bit amused, checks the surroundings, then sits down beside me. Spill the beans, why were you crying? Am I treating you badly? His question hit home, making my heart skip. No, I was just scared, I deflect. Come on, a grown person, crying just because you're lost in a tourist spot. Aren't you worried about the embarrassment? His eyes are unflinchingly on me. Don't tell anyone, I whispered. Okay. He kept staring at me. Fine, if you're not gonna say it, then whatever. What did I say though? Kathy, this is just who I am. I'm straightforward. Don't try to complicate things with me. If you can handle it, we can keep going. If not, what happens if I can't? I asked quietly. Will we break up? Like your other exes? He just looked at me without saying anything. I knew we were probably going to break up. I gave a bitter smile. You think I'm stupid, right? I confessed. I once liked a guy for 3 years. I was willing to do anything for him. I carefully took care of the friendship. People kept asking why I wouldn't just confess or tell him. I wasn't stupid. I just wasn't sure he liked me the way I liked him. I was scared that if I confessed, we couldn't even be friends anymore. On the day of the game, I was ready to confess. Yeah, he found out how I felt. Now, we can't even be friends. Edward, we're not the same. You're direct. You can't handle the way I do things. Did it ever occur to you that you're direct because you can afford to be, because those girls all like you? He was silent for a moment, and then, maybe angry, he walked away. After a few steps, he came back, looked me in the eye, and said harshly, you like someone else but keep kissing me. Who's playing who here? I'm not playing you. I was a little scared. I've wanted to be with you properly from the start. It's just that your actions hurt me. Isn't it you who hates me and wants to play me? He was too angry to speak. Suddenly, he lifted me up. I was scared out of my wits. Before I could react, he kissed me forcefully, grabbing all my breath. Edward, I tried to push him away. He ignored my resistance and held me tighter. Shut up, he said sternly. I was speechless. After a while, he sighed and touched the back of my neck. I gasped, and he deepened the kiss. My heart raced, and I felt like I was floating. I couldn't push him away. The world seemed to dissolve around him. When he finally let go, he gave me a little space and asked, now, tell me, do I hate you? I don't know. Entirely captivated by him, I couldn't think clearly. He gently touched my head and guided it to his chest. Listen. With my ear pressed against his chest, I heard the rapid and strong beating of his heart. I was dumbfounded. In that cavernous space, it was just our breaths and heartbeats echoing. It was a lie to say I wasn't moved. Later, after we both calmed down a bit, we slowly walked outside. He naturally held my hand, and from then on, I only had eyes for him. Be careful. He'd remind me whenever we reached stairs. Not exactly gentle, but it warmed my heart for a long time. He noticed my knee got scraped, but he didn't offer to carry me. I was a bit disappointed. It wasn't like the stories in novels. What are you thinking? He asked when I didn't say anything. Oh, nothing. I scolded myself for my wandering thoughts. He stopped, leaned down, and whispered in my ear, it's not that I don't want to carry you. I can't be that close to you right now. Why? I regretted asking immediately. He gave me a rueful look. I'm a guy. After kissing for that long, do you really not understand? I understand. Blushing furiously, I couldn't bear to look at him. Maybe I should walk on my own. You don't have to hold my hand, I suggested, considering him. Holding hands isn't too much, he chuckled. Okay. My face red, I let him lead me out. It wasn't until later that I realized the cave had emergency exit signs. I had been so scared that I forgot everything. Brain freeze, for sure. When we reunited with his friends outside, the teasing began. Edward, you were in there with your girl for 30 minutes. What were you up to? Oh, come on, Edward would never be that weak. Look at her blushing face. These guys were relentless with their jokes. I was beyond embarrassed. What are you doing? Would you even get it if I told you? Do you have girlfriends? Shut up already. Edward put his baseball cap on my head and glared back at the onlookers. Was that Edward's way of clearing things up? Why did I feel like it just made things worse? I felt so frazzled. Before dinner, Edward suddenly told me to go ahead with his friends. He said he had something to do. Can't I go with you? I asked quietly. I was shy around his friends. If they teased again, I couldn't handle it. Probably best not to, he said with a quick glance. Why? I pressed, still too shy. He didn't answer but sighed and said, come on. Okay. I followed him happily, thinking he was getting something. Oh, maybe he's getting us some food. How sweet. And then we reached the store. When he stood at the checkout, staring at the neatly lined up boxes and asked which flavor I liked, I was dumbfounded. I'll just grab some chips. I darted to the snacks, my heart pounding out of my chest. What was he thinking? I guess he didn't want me there so I wouldn't be embarrassed, hanging out with the guys after hearing he'd buy that. Epic social fail. I lingered in the snack aisle for a long time. When I finally walked out, he was waiting for me, already done with the checkout. My heart raced all the way back. I couldn't bring myself to look at him, let alone talk to him. Luckily, he didn't try to talk to me either. During dinner, my heart was in knots. Edward seemed unfazed, drinking, eating, and occasionally making fun of his friends. True expert, cool as a cucumber. I cursed him under my breath and quietly ate my food. His friends kept trying to get him to drink more. My eye twitched, hard. Don't drink too much, I tugged at his sleeve. He turned to me. Drinking's not good for you, I mumbled. What could I say? Could I just blurt out that drinking makes people loopy and if he tried something later, where would that leave me? This is nothing, he smiled. Don't worry, I won't get drunk. I saw on the news, people drink too much and, you know. I gently reminded him. He laughed again. Lately, he seemed to laugh a lot. When he laughed, there were these tiny dimples, it was confusingly charming. Curse me? He looked down at me, then took the opportunity to give me a quick peck on the cheek. Geez, look at all these people around. My face turned red instantly. Seriously, Edward. I'm about to cry. Think about the impression you're making. Don't worry. He patted my head gently. I'll stop drinking after this glass. All right then. I started fiddling with my phone to distract myself. Is he some sort of magic creature? Whether he's smiling or being stern with me, there's always such affection in his eyes. It's making my heart act up. Edward, you're unbelievable. You invite us out, and we're just bombarded with your lovey-dovey act. Seriously, I've never experienced so much PDA. It's gross. We really are gluttons for punishment, eating it all up from start to finish. His buddies started making a fuss again. But he wasn't the least bit embarrassed or modest. He just said, deal with it, shutting them up. After dinner, we headed back to where we were staying. Oddly enough, his friends didn't suggest playing games or anything. They just obediently went back to their own rooms to sleep. You first or me? Edward asked, pointing to the bathroom with a cigarette in his mouth. Or together? Together? I was completely taken aback. "Edward," I called out to him. We've only been officially a couple for less than a week." Wasn't I clear enough? I had to summon the courage to say, "We should book 2 rooms, right?" He paused for a few seconds, then chuckled, "2 rooms? I'm broke lately." Broke? I was shocked by his explanation. A guy who's always staying at hotels is broke? If I buy that, I'm gullible. I don't know how things were with your previous girlfriends, but I want you to respect me. I'm not okay with this. How long can't you handle it? A month? 2 months? Don't tell me it's 6 months. He was getting a bit worked up. A year. I trembled as I said those words. He looked at me in shock, then took a deep breath. I feel like swearing. What? Forget it. I'll hold it in until it kills me. Then you can find someone else. He was a bit sulky. Don't be mad. I tried comforting him. He shot me a glare. It's my fault, really. Got myself an innocent one. Gosh. He was starting to get grumpy again. I could tell he was agitated, chain smoking the whole time. Finally, he put out his cigarette and beckoned me over. Come here. I won't bite. I'm afraid you'll hit me. He honestly looked like a grumpy lion. Hit you? He paused. Come here, let me give you a kiss. Huh? I was a bit hesitant. Not even a kiss? What kind of relationship is this? It's not like I'm becoming a monk or something. He stared straight at me. Thinking it over, I realized he had a point. Not allowing a kiss was a bit too much. I slowly walked over, but before I got too close, he lost his patience and pulled me onto his lap, covering me with kisses. Caught up in the moment, he asked hoarsely, "Is this all right?" I melted completely. Finally, I said, "No." He had to stop. "Call me if anything comes up." He reminded me with a stern face before leaving, "My phone's on 24/7. All right." I saw him out at the door. Good what? Aren't you gonna close the door, or I'll just stay? Slam. In a panic, I shut the door. Listening to him grumble as he walked away, I couldn't help but chuckle. After a wash, I lay down, thinking back on this surreal day, and found myself smiling uncontrollably. I've finally fallen in love. Edward might be a bit brash and have a temper, but no one treats me as gently as he does. I guess I've struck gold in all this chaos. As for others, whether good or bad, it doesn't concern me anymore. I've realized that when you fall for someone, there's no room for anyone else. All those inner conflicts seem to have vanished too. After the trip, I went back to school. I was in the library every day, and Edward hung out at the bar. Sometimes, I thought about how 2 such different people like us ended up together. It's like some weird fate. Every day, he'd grumble as he dropped me off at the library and then leave. At night, after my study session, he'd come back to pick me up for the dorm. Edward. He walked alongside me on our way back to the dorm. Aren't you tired, running back and forth to walk me back? I study at the library for 3 hours, and he hangs out at the bar for the same time, back and forth. I once suggested he shouldn't bother picking me up, but he insisted that the campus wasn't too safe lately and he was worried. Exhausted, he sighed. Why don't you stop going to the bar? I cautiously asked him. I wasn't sure if he'd get mad. After all, when we first got together, we agreed not to interfere or try to change each other. He didn't react much, just lazily asked, "Then where do I go?" Where? That's a good question. I really didn't know. He's always been aimless, besides bars and clubs, and I couldn't think of another place for him. Edward, is there anywhere you'd like to go? I asked, holding his hand, like, any country you want to visit? He froze up for a moment, his expression serious. Then he let go of my hand, walked over to a secluded planter, sat down, and lit a cigarette. The mood was tense. I wasn't sure if I had said something wrong. Warily, I approached and crouched down to look at his downcast eyes. Are you mad? No. He avoided my gaze. At that moment, I felt he had something on his mind. He wasn't as carefree as he seemed. He just didn't want to show his other side to anyone. Edward, I'm your girlfriend. You can talk to me about anything that's bothering you. I tried to cheer him up. But of course, if you don't feel like sharing, that's okay too. I'll be here for whenever you do. Nothing to say. He hesitated for a bit, then relaxed and patted my head. Okay, I'll just sit with you for a while. I sat next to him, quietly watching him. When I was younger, I wanted to go to the UK. He said suddenly. The UK? Really? I felt excited for some reason because I'm planning to study abroad in the UK. Yeah. Why? Because I heard my mom went to the UK. He smiled lightly. Even though he said it calmly, I still felt a tinge of sadness in his words. What's going on? It's nothing, just that his mom ran off with another man to England and never came back. My heart skipped a beat. But wasn't Edward's mom said to be young and beautiful, often appearing in the newspapers? You know, that pretty woman is my stepmom. He chuckled. She's 10 years older than me, think about how she could have had me. Suddenly I understood. His rebellious nature has something to do with changes in his family. I never thought such a cheerful and fearless guy might have someone he was afraid to mention. Deep down, he carries scars that won't heal. I don't know why, but I suddenly thought of the string of English names on his waist, and a thought flashed through my mind. Taking a chance, I asked him, does your tattoo have anything to do with your mom? He was clearly taken aback by my guess and couldn't speak for a while. Or is it your mom's name? I continued, wanting to confirm my suspicion. He avoided my gaze. You're overthinking it. The way he said you're overthinking it only confirmed what I was thinking. He must miss his mom so much that he tattooed her name in the most hidden spot. Once I figured it out, a surge of emotion rose within me. Rumors are scary, people say it's his foreign girlfriend's name, and he'd rather be misunderstood than let his secret be guessed. Edward, could you smoke less? I didn't want to expose him. If he didn't want to talk, I'd keep his secret. Why do you care? He snapped back to his usual tone. That's the Edward the First liked, the one who's always on top of the world. I don't. I cupped his face. Next time you smoke, don't expect to kiss me. Don't want to. You said it. I pretended to leave. But he pulled me back and kissed me hard. Yep, that's him, so stubborn. Back in the dorm, I lay awake all night with Edward's secret. One thought burned in my mind, I wanted him to go to England with me. The next day, Edward and his roommate walked me to the library's entrance before leaving. Edward. I called him softly. Yeah? He stood there, hands in pockets. I glanced at his roommate, hesitating to speak. Spit it out. He grinned at my nervousness. I walked closer, lowering my voice. Can you hang out with me in the library for a while? He raised an eyebrow. Why? I don't need a reason. I stammered, when I think of you, I just want to see you, helps me study better. He paused, then chuckled, leaning down to whisper, if I go, you'll be even more distracted. His voice sent shivers down my spine. I began to doubt myself. He ruffled my hair and motioned his buddy to leave. I got anxious. Edward. I gently hooked his finger. His fingers felt so cold. He stopped, looking down at our hands with a helpless smile. If you want to stick around, forget studying. I'm not going to the library. But I don't have time, I have to study vocabulary. I tugged at him, just this once? Please? You want me to look like a fool in front of my friends? He sighed, exasperated, you're always trouble. But in the end, he went with me. His buddy was too shocked to speak. When Edward walked in, I started regretting it since every girl seemed to be staring at him, and some even took pictures. Happy now? He asked with a grin, glancing around and shrugging in resignation. Don't worry about them. I was anxious. Honestly, I feared Edward being in the library would cause too much buzz. At first, he just flicked through comics and played games. Then I handed him some IELTS materials, hoping he'd study with me. Kathy, are you messing with me? He looked at the stack with disbelief. I'm not. I stood on tiptoe, whispered in his ear, next semester, I'm off to study in England. If you don't come with me, missing you might ruin my studies. He was speechless for a while. You're going to England? Yeah, preparing for the IELTS was all for that. You're a genius, I'm a slacker. What are you thinking? If you go, we break up. Find someone over there, I can't expand my skills to that. He snapped at me, frustrated. But I don't want to break up. Not going. He tossed the materials at me and stormed off. As expected, by the next day, news of Edward being in the library spread like wildfire. Wow, Kathy, did you work some magic on him just on a little trip? Unbelievable. What did you do to steal the heart of such a player? Seriously, a guy always fighting and clubbing, and now taking love to the library, isn't it cute? Are you too? You know. I was barely back in the dorm when my friends grilled me. Nope. I was baffled, their imaginations running wild. He's not that kind of guy. We've only been together 2 weeks. Doesn't sound like him. Watch out for the girls around him, they're everywhere. I stopped talking. Honestly, I hadn't thought about it, expecting him to drop me quickly. We'd be even. But now, if I asked myself, am I willing? I started to waver. Just mentioning England made him angry, and he hasn't texted me since last night. Are we hitting the library again? Can we sit next to you to check him out? My roommate asked. Who's handsome? I rolled my eyes. Edward, duh. We're ready for some love drama. You guys. I remained silent, we had a fight. He's not coming. How'd you fight already after barely dating? I had to tell them again that I was going to the UK. After I finished, they said I was out of my mind. This relationship wasn't stable, and I was saying I was leaving, who would want to deal with that? What should I do? I really had no experience with this. You need to make him fall head over heels for you. So in love that he'd follow you there without you even asking, my roommates offered love advice, but I was just lost. Out of pride, I didn't contact him since he wasn't reaching out to me. Every day I waited for his call or text until it wore me out. I started to think maybe he was really tired of me. He kissed me and said he liked me during the trip, but what did that mean? Maybe it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing. I just stuck to my schedule with classes and library trips to keep myself busy and stop overthinking. Friday night, I finished my books at the library, and on my way back to the dorm, his call finally came. At that moment, I was thrilled. Trying to keep my excitement in check, I answered with, Edward? Silence from the other end. Then bam. He hung up. Why would someone call and not say anything, then hang up? I had no choice but to call back. It took a long while for someone to answer. I had a bad feeling about this. Edward, I called softly. Kathy? Came a female voice. My mind went blank for a second. If I wasn't mistaken, it was Candy's voice. Where's Edward? I want to talk to him. He's been drinking and is a bit tipsy, not really in a state to talk, she said, hinting at something that made me uncomfortable. The background noise was loud, like a bar. So why was Edward with Candy again? Has he been avoiding me because he's with another girl? I bit my lip, feeling a pang of jealousy as I asked, where are you? I'm coming to see him. It's late, the dorms are closing soon, and Edward didn't want you to come out. Don't worry about me, just tell me where. What good would it do? Are you really in the same league as him? She questioned me, leaving me speechless. Kathy, don't bother coming. He hasn't even mentioned your name all night. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. After hanging up, I sat numbly on the flower bed outside the dorm, replaying everything. Saying I wasn't hurt would be a lie. Is she right? Am I really in Edward's league? No, I'm not. The gaps between us are just too many. Thinking about it all made my head ache. Finally, I messaged Edward's brother on Instagram to ask for the bar's address. It was my first time at a bar. I timidly edged through the throbbing crowd to their booth, already feeling deflated. Is this his world? Full of booze, smoke, music, and women dressed provocatively dancing around. I was shocked. His expression wasn't much different. He was sitting with his brother. Candy and some other girls were at the end of the booth. He didn't seem drunk, but then again, Edward could hold his liquor well, so who knew if he was really sober. Bracing myself, I went over. His brother tactfully gave up his seat. What are you doing here? He asked with a smile, the first words he'd said to me all week. They said you were drunk. I felt guilty under his gaze. Would he laugh at me if I admitted I came because of Candy's call out of jealousy? Drunk? Are you here to drag me back? He teased. I can't drag you. I replied seriously. Not drunk, he laughed, ruffling my hair, calling me silly. This place isn't for you. Don't come here again. He glanced at my clothes and picked up another drink. His words stung. Was he again pointing out the differences between us? I bit my lip and stayed silent. As he was about to drink, I snatched the glass and downed it myself. It burned more than I expected, a fire in my throat. Turning to him, I asked, "Am I suitable now?" He was stunned. Not just him, his brother and even Candy were too. Sis, have some water, this stuff burns. Someone handed me some water, so I took a small sip. Everyone now knew we were in a bit of a spat, which made it awkward. Edward, maybe I'm not suitable, but there are others who are, I snapped angrily. He stared at me, frowning but saying nothing. My tears just fell at that moment. Maybe it was the booze, or an emotional overload, but I felt embarrassed and wanted to leave right away. Just as I took a step, someone pulled me back. I fell into someone's lap. Finish what you started, he warned softly. I don't want to. Having to talk it out with all his friends watching was horrible. All right. If not now, I'll find somewhere to properly talk, he said, clearly annoyed. He stood up, wrapped his arm around me, disregarding the stares, and headed out. After a while, I started feeling a bit woozy. He took me to a hotel and sat me on the couch, waiting for my explanation. So what's this about tonight? Nothing, I turned away from his gaze. Aren't you ignoring me, hanging out with other girls? Maybe I'm just not right for you. What other girls? Stop with the attitude, he looked at me seriously. I don't know, your ex before that, too many to count. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me. Got other complaints? Spit them out. I admit, I've had girlfriends before you. You already knew I love going to bars, that's not news. If you can't handle it, then why chase me? You wanted this, now you're messing with me? What chase? Got me? He kinda seemed pitiful. I took a moment, and he sat next to me, making me feel stressed. Half of his arrogance faded away. So you're hanging out with your ex, then what am I? I tilted my head and asked him. Which ex? He looked a bit annoyed. Candy, I blurted out. He paused for a second, then laughed, making me feel uneasy. He raised his hand as if to pat my head, but I dodged it. Instead, he just lit a cigarette and watched me with a smile. Jealous? Why take it out on me? I'm not, I fired back. Who's jealous? He really likes flattering himself. Not jealous? He took a drag on his cigarette, got up, poured me a glass of warm water, and handed it to me. Spilled the jealousy jar and still not admitting. You. Hearing him, my face turned red. Got a rash? He stared at my face, reaching to touch. No way, just a bit warm. I was genuinely feeling warm, had to fan myself. Who told you to drink? Drink more warm water, feel better. He looked displeased as he stared at me. Oh. I'm not drunk. I knew he was gonna comment. He watched as I finished the water, took the glass, and stared at me. Nothing's going on with her. Who? I pretended not to understand. He called my bluff and pinched my neck. His hands were ice cold. She came up after, I ignored her. His explanation was straightforward. You ignored her, yet she picked up your call? Who believes that? I mumbled begrudgingly. I don't know. He seemed to realize something, checked his call log, then showed me. She deleted it. I went quiet. It's possible Candy took his phone while he wasn't watching, but how would they let her near the phone? I couldn't believe they weren't together at some point. I went to the bathroom, left my phone. He seemed to know what I was thinking and stated plainly. Oh. So that's what happened. Oh, what? He tapped my forehead. What did she tell you to rush over here? Said you were drunk. I stuttered, realizing Candy's story had holes. Why did I buy it, acting without thinking in the heat of the moment? Now I'm too shy to admit it. Yeah, and then? He put out the cigarette, listening patiently. Then. I was worried you'd overdo it, wanted to take care of you. I began spinning tales, feeling guilty. He leaned over, resting his head on my shoulder, then take care of me. His head heavily leaned, my heart raced. You're not even drunk. He lightly raised his head, whispered in my ear, drunk now. What? Is he an actor? Was cold and fierce seconds ago, now suddenly claims to be drunk? If you're drunk, go lie down. I carefully maneuvered his head, trying to escape, feeling dizzy myself. Honestly, the booze is kicking in now, I feel a bit fuzzy. Dizzy? He perked up, then. Let's see, I'll take care of you. No need for your care, leave, I need to sleep. I pushed him away. In the struggle, he suddenly pinned me to the couch. You're quite unwell, how could I not care? He leaned in, almost touching my face with his words. Holding my hand in place, taking care of you is a boyfriend's duty. Duty? Does he think I'm 3? I regret lowering my guard. Now I'm a lamb to the slaughter. Edward. I softly called his name. He responded, gently kissing the corner of my lips, then looked at me, haven't seen you in days, missed you. His sudden sweet talk almost broke my defenses. Edward, stay rational. I gently reminded him. 3 days without seeing you, remind me what rational means, You tell me. He pecked me again. This behavior is terrifying. My breathing hitched, heart pounding uncontrollably. Edward, remember your promise to me. I dared to remind, hinting wildly. He went silent, gazing deeply, then said, must have been a killer in my past life, now tormented by you. Huh? This tense? It's just a kiss. He intertwined our fingers, barking. Oh. He's really fierce. Supposed to be a tender moment, yet he's tough on me. Edward, could you be a bit kinder? I softly asked. Kind? He didn't glare, only sighed with a gentle, okay, be good, sweetheart. Before I realized, he kissed me. His hand cradling my neck, I instinctively opened my mouth. After a while, he pulled back, catching his breath. Known Candy since childhood, never thought of her that way, don't overthink. His logic as he kissed left me flustered. Oh. I gazed dumbfounded, shamelessly wanting more. Want more? He teased, pulling away, no more kisses. Oh. I felt a bit dazed. Still looking? He covered my head with a jacket. Stop tempting me, trying to kill me? I stayed quiet, his words made my mind blurry. After a while, he returned and helped me off the couch. Drink some water. He poured me another cup of hot water. Don't drink anymore, okay? He said while handing me the water. You sleep on the bed, I'll take the couch. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of guy. Just want to keep an eye on you in case you feel bad tonight. I was feeling dizzy and barely thinking straight. You go freshen up, I'll wait outside. Call me if you need anything, he said. He went to the bathroom to run the water and check the temperature, then urged me to wash up. I stumbled towards the bathroom, and he followed behind. Right before closing the door, he asked, "Can you manage on your own? If you're really feeling dizzy, I can help." No need. I quickly refused. Don't trust me? He glared at me. I'm just trying to help and you're not even grateful. I do trust you, I said, looking at him seriously. This guy, even though he seemed carefree on the outside, was so gentle and attentive to me. I knew he was a good person and I believed in him. Once I finished getting ready for bed, he went in to wash up. When he finished, he settled on the couch. After a while, he came over to me as if he remembered something. I quickly pretended to be asleep. Get some sleep, good night, he said, giving me a gentle kiss on the forehead. Edward. I was filled with feelings for him. He asked, squatting next to the bed, waiting for me to speak. Let's have a real relationship, I said, gathering all my courage. Huh? How should we do that? He looked at me, his gaze so tender, like he'd give me the moon if I asked. You be good, I'll be good, and if possible. I paused, feeling as if I was making a big decision. I want us to be together. He looked surprised for a moment. Why say this all of a sudden? I knew his relationships didn't last more than 3 months, and I didn't want to be like them. He chuckled. What are you thinking? There are rumors you've had dozens of girlfriends, I admitted, feeling a little confused. That's nonsense, he said, touching my head. Don't overthink it. It's you who doesn't talk to me for days, so I don't want to disturb your studies, he sighed. Excuses. I replied. It's me. It's me not giving you security, he comforted me. Edward. After what Candy said today, I felt sad because I really like you. He was stunned for several seconds, then said, silly. We were silent again. He turned off the light and stayed by my bed. What do you see in me? I'm not perfect. Others might disagree, but I just wanted to be with him. Some things are hard to say out loud without feeling embarrassed. Kathy, I can't promise you anything, he sighed deeply. I don't want a promise, I replied. Again, silence filled the room. After a long pause, I asked quietly, going to the UK is something I've decided long ago. Would you wait for me? Immediately, I felt guilty for asking such a thing. Why should he wait for me? He could be with many girls, why choose me? He was silent for a few seconds, then sat on the floor. Kathy, no one can predict the future. My heart skipped. Of course, he wouldn't want to. Oh. I said no more. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. He touched my face and was about to kiss me goodnight when he felt the tears and paused. Why are you crying? He asked softly. I'm not, I lied and turned away. He sighed, so reluctant to leave me. Love me so much you can't live without me? No, I sobbed. Then sleep well. Stop overthinking, he said, giving me a light kiss on the forehead, tucked me in, and went back to the couch. With the effects of the alcohol still there, I soon dozed off. The next day, he took me back to school and went to his dorm. He said he needed more sleep and skipped lunch. If he wasn't sleeping, why did he need to catch up on sleep? Back in my dorm, I thought about what I said to him last night. It felt like a crazy confession. My face flushed with embarrassment. I must have been bold from the booze, saying whatever came to mind. I felt too ashamed to face anyone. At dinner, he didn't reach out to me, and I didn't reach out to him either. Our texts were brief. When he asked if I'd eaten, I simply replied, yes. Don't ask. If asked, it's because I'm shy. I couldn't face him. No lunch invitation, no dinner together. Was he avoiding me? Just as I entered the classroom, a message from him popped up. No, I hurried to class. Quickly replying, I added, I want to see you too, hoping it sounded a bit warmer. After a while, with no response, I assumed he was out having fun and thought nothing of it. Halfway through class, his message came. Where's your class? I replied honestly, in the classroom. He wanted details. Room number? I relented, 408. Then silence. It felt like he was checking on me. With my head buried in thoughts of last night, I didn't notice the change in the classroom's atmosphere. Someone called my name. Huh. I looked around and saw my roommate giving me a look. I followed her gaze and couldn't believe my eyes. Edward. Dressed in a black hoodie, leaning casually at the classroom door, he caught my eye and winked slightly. At that moment, my heart pounded, and the world seemed to fade into silence. I felt like everyone was making a fuss, and the whole class buzzed. Are you a part of this class? The professor seemed perplexed by Edward's presence. Nope, he replied without hesitation. Then please don't stand here. You're disrupting the class. My heart clenched for him. I motioned him to leave. He paid no heed, languidly saying, just here to sit with my girlfriend. Me. As soon as he said that, the whole classroom exploded. The professor's face turned from white to black with shock. My face? Red as a tomato, couldn't show it to anyone. Dating's fine with the teacher if it means learning and growing together, but skipping class for love? Not so much. The professor was so surprised he stumbled over his words. Hurry back to your seats, don't disrupt the class. Thanks. He walked over to me, cool as a cucumber. My heart beat faster with each step he took until I felt numb all over. He didn't hesitate to shoo my roommate away and sat right next to me. After a few minutes, the class calmed down, but I just buried my head, avoiding his gaze. He picked up my book, pretending to read, but pulled my hand under the desk, placing it on his leg. Edward, I tried pulling my hand away, nervous someone would see. He ignored me. My hand, I reminded him. No holding hands? He asked without looking up from the book. I gave up resisting. To avoid attracting attention, I scribbled a note. Why did you come over? I passed the paper to him. He glanced at it, smirking, and wrote back, bored, so I came. Bored? Don't come over next time. His casualness made me sweat. He read my note, turned to me with a mischievous look. His stare was intimidating. I quickly explained, you're making me feel awkward, everyone's looking at me. I don't want to be the center of attention. He seemed to relent a bit, then slowly wrote, all right. After a pause, feeling the warmth of his hand, I realized love could be this sweet. It felt like the world disappeared, and just him holding my hand was enough forever. After a long while, I wrote in the corner of the paper, I wish you'd hold my hand forever. But I didn't show it to him. He must have peeked, though, because he seemed stunned. After a few seconds, he wrote back, is the IELTS hard? His question floored me. I looked up at him in disbelief. His gaze was playful, waiting for my answer. I took the paper, looked at his question, is the IELTS hard? It warmed my heart. It's pretty tough, but I can help you. Sound good? He wrote, can I say no? Seeing that, I felt my heart drop. But then he added, just kidding, don't want to make you cry. Really? Did he mean it? I was overwhelmed with emotion. He just glanced at me and teased, silly. From then on, there were rumors about Edward around school. Edward's actually trying to study. Did the sun rise in the west? Did his girlfriend put a spell on him? The once bad boy is on the straight and narrow? It bugged me to hear them sometimes. Who cares what they say? Edward always shrugged it off. How do you do that? Not let it affect you? I asked him. They're nothing to me, why should I care? He shot back. He always called me silly for paying attention to rumors and gossip. So Edward's days of skipping class and clubbing turned into attending lectures and hitting the library. He was naturally smart, picking up vocabulary faster than me. They said Edward was planning to go to England. But I knew it also had to do with his mom. He told me when he was 10, she left with someone else. Since then, he hid his emotions and started rebelling. Even when he rebelled, he studied on the side. As a kid, he would fight during the day and study at night. I thought if I acted bad and teachers called my parents, my mom would come back. His dad never came to parent-teacher conferences because he was always busy. Each night on our way back to my dorm, I'd quietly listen to his stories. I couldn't hear even a hint of sadness. I was amazed by it. And did she come back? I asked him, stopping. He just flicked away an unlit cigarette and answered casually, nope. My heart sank. Then why study at night? I questioned. He just laughed, Plan B. His response left me quiet for a moment, then I softly asked, bad student worried your mom wouldn't love you if you didn't do well? He didn't confirm or deny it. His silence broke my heart. I looked at him, wanting to give him everything he ever wanted. Edward, I took his hand, can I be your family from now on? He looked at me, couldn't help but laugh. Be family? How? Planning to marry me? No. Not that. What was I even saying? I stammered, realizing how ridiculous I sounded. I only wanted to treat him like family, be good to him forever. I swear I didn't mean that. I just want to take care of you, whatever you want, I want to give it to you. I hastily explained. Oh. He nodded toward the couples clinging downstairs, leaned in and whispered, I've always been clear on what I want. When will you give it to me? His words made me blush instantly. Edward. I whispered, trying not to lash out, grabbed my bag and took off. He didn't protest. When I glanced back, he stood there smiling, waiting. I hesitated, then dashed up the stairs. He always teased me until my face burned. But I knew he wasn't just teasing. We'd been dating for 3 months now. Sure, we kissed, but it never went further. He respected me, but I knew he wanted more. Every time, I could feel that. I'm not clueless, just acting like it. Back in my room, my heart was still pounding. That night, lying in bed thinking about it, I couldn't sleep. I asked myself, am I ready? And I realized I was. I liked him. I wanted to give him everything. I trusted him, felt like he was my forever home. I'm just a bit scared. What am I scared of? I don't even know. In the end, I texted him. Let's go stay out after the IELTS test. It took him a while to respond. Sure. I stared at those 2 words on the screen, feeling like everything was finally settled. The anticipation was bittersweet and long. The IELTS exam was approaching. I didn't really know how Edward was doing with his studies. He was always so composed with everything he did. But I had faith in him. Lately, he kept getting calls, always leaving in the middle of reading to answer them, and took forever to come back. I didn't really pay much attention to it. I never would have guessed that on the exam day, he took a call before entering the test and never came back. I didn't know at the time. I learned about it 2 weeks later. That day after the test, he just said he had something to do and went home, so my plans for a night out went down the drain. Over the next 2 weeks, he started acting distant. How distant? I'd text him, and he'd either respond with just one sentence hours later or not at all. I'd call him, and he'd always be on another call. At first, I thought maybe he was just relaxing too much after studying, got lazy, didn't think much of it. Until... Kathy, why haven't you been hanging out with Edward lately? He went home, I explained. Home? I saw him on the street yesterday. I froze. No one spoke for a bit. Then a roommate quietly asked, Kathy, maybe you should keep an eye on the girls around Edward. Okay, got it, I said, standing up and heading to the laundry room. I grabbed my phone, dialed him, and in those few seconds of waiting, I was actually cursing myself. Cursing myself for being petty, for not trusting him. I didn't believe he'd betray me. He's been so good to me, changed so much for me. It's not just me who noticed, everyone at school saw how he changed. If he didn't really love me, why would he have the patience to change, just to be with me? All these thoughts flashed through my mind. I even thought about hanging up and waiting for him to contact me. But the call connected. Edward, I called his name like I always did. Yeah, he replied with all the noise in the background. I could almost picture them drinking at the bar again. Are you at a bar? Did you come back? Yeah. He replied so lightly, like nothing was different. I paused, summoning the courage. Can I come see you? He hesitated for a moment. Don't. Why not? I suddenly felt a little upset. He came back, didn't look for me, and now he's telling me not to find him? It's not convenient, he said nonchalantly. I couldn't believe my ears. Not convenient for what? He hung up before I finished speaking. I was completely stunned. Even an idiot could tell something was wrong. I called him again, but now he just wouldn't answer. I started to panic. Sent him tons of messages, questioning, pleading, angry, coaxing. He never replied. Edward, what's going on? If you want to break up, just say so. You don't need to do this, I texted him in frustration. He finally replied with one word, okay. At that moment, my world shattered. I kept texting, asking why he changed so suddenly, why break up so abruptly. He never responded again. We started a cold war, more like I was the only one in it. My roommates noticed my swollen eyes every day and figured out we'd broken up. They tried to console me. He's a jerk, not worth your time. Got tired of you in just a few months, what a foul person. We all thought he'd changed, but he's rotten to the core. Kathy, don't cry over him. He's not worth it. You're leaving the country soon anyway, just forget about him. Their words of comfort didn't really comfort me. The day the IELTS results came out, I checked mine, I got the score I wanted. I couldn't resist checking his score too, it showed he didn't take it. I was stunned. My trust in him started to waver. I impulsively went to find him at his dorm. It was the first time I sought him out since the breakup. After waiting about an hour, he finally came down, looking so annoyed when he saw me. I stared blankly at the face I had missed day and night. I wanted to say I missed him so much but couldn't get the words out. What do you want? He asked, cigarette in mouth, sounding so uninterested. The IELTS results are out. I looked at him pathetically, hoping to find a trace of affection in his eyes, but saw none. Yeah. You didn't take it? I tried to keep calm, asking slowly despite my racing heart. And? He was still the same, hadn't changed a bit, but his tone was icy, cold enough to make me cry. Edward, did you kid when you said you'd go to the UK with me? I asked with a smile, though it looked more like a grimace. You registered, studied so long, but didn't take the test. Think whatever you want, he said. No further explanation. My heart sank, and I felt the glacier inside me crumble. So you saying you wanted to be with me forever was a lie too? I never said that, you did. His smile pierced me deeply. Edward. I could feel my throat tighten as I began to cry again. I thought I'd cried all my tears these past few days, but he could still bring them out with ease. Don't cry, he said, I hear you did great on IELTS. Go to the UK and do well. Don't come looking for me anymore. We should part on good terms. Part on good terms? I just couldn't hold it in anymore, and I started bawling my eyes out. Edward, you jerk. Weren't you supposed to come to the UK with me? How could you do this? I cried as I confronted him. I'm a jerk. I've changed my mind. He sighed, walked over, and pulled my hat over my head. Go back. Don't ever run into a jerk like me again. He said as he took my phone, deleted his number and Instagram, and handed it back. Edward. What did I do wrong? Tell me, I can change. Please don't be like this. As he was leaving, I grabbed his hand, sobbing uncontrollably. But he pried my hand away, took a deep breath, and said, You did everything right. You were just unlucky to meet someone like me. I'm heading up. With that, he pulled up his hoodie and walked upstairs. I crouched down, crying my heart out. Jack was the one who took me back. Stop crying. Jack lifted me up, walked me to my dorm, and called my roommate. He broke up with me, I sobbed to him. I know, but it was bound to happen sooner or later. Jack hesitated. You're not the only one who broke up with someone. His words left me perplexed. But I was too dizzy from crying to think about it. My roommate picked me up. Everyone took turns comforting me, but none of it registered. Once I finished crying, I lay in bed when my phone rang. Instinctively, I picked it up and hurriedly opened a message. It was from Jack. He sent me a picture. It was Candy's Twitter account announcing a new relationship. The time? 2 p.m., the exact moment I left Edward's dorm. The male lead in the announcement was Edward. In that moment, I was suddenly unable to cry. It felt like my soul had left my body. So, they were together all along, huh? All these signs were there, but I chose to deceive myself. I recalled Edward telling me he had nothing to do with Candy, wasn't interested in her, but within an hour of our breakup, he was already public with someone else. Is that funny? Yeah, it's funny. I was like a clown, trusting him, believing every word he said. And him? He was just playing with me. That relationship took a lot out of me. I even thought I'd never love anyone again. A few months later, I went to the UK. Jack went too. That surprised me a bit. You know, Jack never planned on coming to the UK. He had someone before, wanted to stay back home, but now, there's no reason. He gave a wry smile. When he said that, those past people and events felt so distant, they barely hurt anymore. You ever regret it? Jack asked me. Regret what? I replied with a smile. Regret running over to kiss that jerk during the basketball game? He handed me a soda. I took it, watching the white seagulls fly over the sea, my mind was blank. Didn't you dodge me? I was ready to confess to you during that game, but you didn't like me back. I teased him. I admired myself a little for turning such an embarrassing memory into a joke. I never thought I'd bump into Jack in a foreign country, both having just broken up. We seemed like kindred spirits. If I told you I was just shocked speechless then, would you believe me? He laughed. Right, sure. I wasn't as pretty as your dream girl, scared you so bad you called me a sister. I shot back at him. And with that, we both fell silent. Lost in our own thoughts. But, it felt nice. Jack and I weren't exactly friends, not lovers either, maybe just old classmates. It made everything so easy. I don't regret it, I suddenly said. He wasn't all that bad. I looked down, hoping to clear the clouds in my heart. Maybe it was because he was really sweet to me before, and even though we didn't part on the best terms, I had a soft spot for him. I gave a bittersweet smile. And you? I asked him, do you regret waiting for her all those years, being with her? He was silent for a moment. Regret what? He also gave a wry smile. Throwing bits of bread into the air, the seagulls rushed over to grab them in mid-flight. I was obsessed. I couldn't get over her without having dated her, even if it didn't really count. I never even held her hand. I knew from the start she just used me to make someone else jealous, but I was happy to be with her. In that way, I'm not much better off than you. With that, we exchanged a knowing smile. We laughed so much, the seagulls scattered into the sky, startled. After a while, he stopped and looked at me. She breaking up with me was inevitable. She never liked me. He paused. But you breaking up with him, don't you think it's a bit strange? I paused mid-laugh, and what about us isn't inevitable? He liked you. Jack looked at me seriously. I didn't say anything, just forced a smile. I didn't get why he was talking nonsense. Anyone saying Edward liked me right now, I just couldn't believe it. That day I didn't just happen to run into you at the dorm. Jack hesitated again. Edward called me, told me you were crying downstairs, asked me to look after you. My mind went blank, like static noise. He probably thought, once he and Candy broke up, I'd end up liking you, see your worth, and come back for you, so he asked me to take care of you. What a joke. I stood there, stunned. My mind was a mess. Kathy, I'm not as much of a jerk. Even if I liked you, I wouldn't take advantage of you. So, do you like me? I tried to sound casual as I joked. For a moment, he was taken aback, and after a long pause, he said, I still think being friends is probably best. I cut him off, smiling. I really couldn't bear to hear it. I didn't want any romance right now, not with anyone. Later, back at my rented place. I kept thinking over what Jack said during the day, and the more I thought, the harder it was to sleep. So I just opened my laptop and started searching online for any news about Edward. 20. The day I broke up with him, I deleted all his friends and photos. I couldn't get any updates about him anymore. I logged into my secret Facebook account. I hadn't logged in for almost a year since Candy found out I was following 3 people with it. When I opened it, I noticed a new follower. Curious, I clicked on the profile and froze. Edward? When did this happen? I went to his page, and just like before, he hadn't posted anything, only occasionally liking soccer games. I was confused. Was it a coincidence that he followed me? He couldn't possibly know that it was my secret account. From the moment I saw that he followed me, my heart started racing. I tried to find clues about him, so I checked who he followed. There, I found that he was following things like UK news and weather forecasts. My heart skipped a beat, and I was so shocked, I held my breath and couldn't move. After a few minutes, I wondered if it was just a coincidence. Then I did something impulsive. I sent him a message from the secret account. Just Edward. As soon as I sent it, regret followed. Was it too abrupt to reach out from the secret account after 10 months? Was he still with Candy, or moved on with someone new? Of course, there was no reply. I even started thinking maybe he followed me accidentally. But then how do you explain the UK Facebook stuff? After waiting anxiously for hours, I gave up and dozed off. The next day, I woke up with dark circles under my eyes, just sitting around at home. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. On a whim, I headed to a place. A small, somewhat remote town in the UK. It took several transfers before I arrived at this White House by evening. Standing at the doorway, I hesitated. I wasn't even sure why I was there, just because Edward had mentioned once that his mom lived here. Why not find her if you know the address? I asked. He laughed and said he found it in his dad's itinerary. He had no friends in the UK. If you want to find someone's address, it's not that hard. Especially when you're smart like him. I'm afraid she won't recognize me, or that she will. So I just stood there, staring at the house, thinking I was too rash. How should I introduce myself to his mom? Although I simply wanted to see how she was doing for him. His mom must be beautiful. I imagine her smile being as captivating as Edward's. I hoped she'd also miss Edward as much as he missed seeing her. I thought if she's happy, I'd let him know. But if not, what then? Should I tell him the truth or lie? While I was overwhelmed with thoughts, a voice behind me spoke. Are you lost? Surprised, I turned around to see a little girl holding a puppy, staring intently. Could she speak Chinese? That was my first reaction. No, I said, looking at her, feeling she seemed familiar. Are you Chinese? She asked again. Yes. I knelt down to chat easily. She was cute with big eyes and a small mouth like a Barbie doll. I like Chinese people. My mom is Chinese, she said, smiling, eager to chat. This triggered a feeling in my gut. Sure enough, a white-haired man stepped out of the house, calling her name, telling her not to hold the dog too long. Something clicked inside me. Daddy, can I invite her to play with me? She asked in Chinese to him. He seemed unsure about her playing with a stranger. Daddy, I miss Mom so much and want to speak Chinese, please? He looked at me, sighing helplessly, and walked over. He was tall, seemed friendly. Sorry, could you please come inside to play with her? He added as if sensing my hesitation. Her mom was Chinese, he explained. I nodded, staring at him, understanding somewhat. Meeting Edward's mom would be bittersweet. She seemed to have a new family, a kind man, the daughter was pretty, and he seemed to adore her. At least, she seemed at peace. He sighed, continuing, her mom passed away in an accident half a year ago, and she misses her dearly. An accident? Passed away? I could barely process his words. You're saying her mom died? I asked, incredulous. Yes, he nodded, looking dejected. She can't accept it and thinks her mom is just sleeping, so wants to find Chinese friends. My mind went blank. I wasn't sure how I ended up inside or made my way into the mom's room. The little girl was overjoyed and eagerly shared stories about her mom. I felt like I was drifting. Ultimately, I asked, did you know your wife has another child in China? I wondered how Edward would take the news. He feared she'd forget him, yet dreaded her remembering. But not this cruel turn. My heart ached. The man paused, surprised but nodded. Yes, and you're a friend, I replied. He sighed, my wife's son came here when she passed to take her ashes. I was stunned. When? September, 2021. I reflexively thought of the IELTS exam date. It was a day earlier than what he said. So, he missed the exam that day because he went to the UK to take his mom home? Later, he chatted with me a bit more and asked me to send regards to the family of his wife's son in China. I felt completely out of it. As I was leaving, a little girl suddenly pulled out a bunch of cards from a pile of books and handed them to me. Big sister, can you take these to my brother when you go back? Brother? I picked up the cards. They had some portraits on them. They looked like a young boy. I was a bit puzzled. The man explained, after my wife came here to the UK, she had amnesia for a long time, so I didn't know she had a son in China. She was in treatment. It was last year that she started to remember bits and pieces, and she drew these cards, telling me that she had a son in China who looks like this. The day she called me after remembering was the day she got into an accident on her way to the airport to fly back to find her son. I was taken aback even more by this. After a long pause, I asked him, why didn't you give these to her son? No chance, he said. He and his father came to collect her ashes and left. They didn't say a word. They probably blame me for not taking care of her. Then I left. Holding a bunch of cards, I couldn't stop thinking about what Edward's mom felt as she drew these pictures or how anxious she was on her way to the airport. She really forgot him. But her love didn't fade. If she hadn't lost her memory, she wouldn't have stayed away. He wouldn't have been heartbroken from missing her. Thinking about all this made me restless. I didn't even return to where I was staying. I booked a flight back to China straight away. I couldn't wait another moment. In the middle of the night, I got on a flight home. Looking at the cards, thinking of Edward, I cried my eyes out. He'd be so hurt finding out about this. But if I didn't tell him, he'd be heartbroken forever, never knowing that his mom loved him so much. I cried so hard, my eyes were swollen, but I didn't care. I ran straight back to school. On the way, people stared at me like I was crazy, but nothing mattered anymore. A classmate told me Edward was interning at his dad's company and wasn't at school. So, I took a taxi to his company. I got there just as everyone was leaving. I stood at the entrance looking around the sea of people, but I couldn't spot him. Panicking, I started to head to security to ask, and turned around to bump into someone. Looking for me? A voice came from above, and I froze. Edward, I called him, glancing around and told him how I couldn't find him because he was right behind me. Still so clueless, standing behind you for half an hour, he laughed. Looking up, I noticed his hair buzzed short, his sharpness hidden in a black suit, no longer resembling the old Edward. Seeing him, tears suddenly poured down my face. You cry seeing me? You look terrible, he said, wiping my face. Edward. I realized I was speechless all of a sudden. I'm here, he said, looking at me with reddened eyes. Let's go. He didn't ask why I came looking for him, said nothing at all, just took my hand and led me to the parking lot. Without a word, he put me in his car, buckled me in, and started driving. My mind was a blur the whole way. I just stared at him blankly, unsure how to bring up the cards in my bag. Is he happy to see me? I don't know. I was just staring at his profile as he drove, feeling content just looking at him. How's it over there? He asked calmly. Pretty good, I replied, trying to figure out how to tell him in the best way possible. That's good, he smiled softly, then went quiet again, lost in thought. There are tissues, he said at a red light, turning to get them for me. Suddenly being so close, I found myself staring at his face, dazed. Are you, single now? I asked out of the blue. He paused, handed me the tissues. Yeah. We both fell silent again. Did he break up with Candy? Is he still single? That's not like him. There are always girls around him. I didn't even know what I was expecting. While I was lost in thought, he asked, want to come to my place? Caught off guard, I looked at him and just mumbled a shallow sure. And the car sped to his garage. He led me upstairs, offered me slippers, and as I changed, he stood in front of me, unmoving. Staring at my lips, he softly asked, can I kiss you? I didn't answer for a second. The next I knew, I tossed my bag aside and kissed him first. He seemed surprised at first, then responded eagerly. Things were getting out of hand. Edward, there's something I need to tell you, I said, stopping his wandering hands, trying to regain my focus. Yeah, he looked down at me, red-eyed, breathing uneven. Later. I couldn't say no to him. Later, exhausted, I gazed at him. He stared back at me. Suddenly, his eyes turned red. Kathy, don't mess with me. I'm not, I said, and after a moment, he lunged and kissed me again. Why'd you come back? Leaving once and coming back, are you leaving again this time? He asked me. Yeah, I whispered to him. Damn. He looked ready to explode with anger. Even if I leave, I'll come back. As long as you don't give up on me, I won't give up on you, I said, reaching out to touch his head. You're the one who suggested breaking up, he said coldly, staring at me. I did, but it was you who left me first, I shot back, not backing down. He fell silent for a moment, sighing. Because all you women are the same. Once you go to England, you never come back. I can only do this. I don't want to hold you back, but I'm not going to England, he added after a while. Who says going to England means you won't come back? Didn't I come back? I looked at him, hesitating about how to bring up that thing. Back for a couple days just to tease me, treating me like a dog, he said, looking defeated. Seeing him like this softened my heart. I turned over and hugged him. Edward, people who love you will come back. I love you, so I will, no matter what. He didn't move. Let's be good to each other, no fighting, okay? He stared at me for a moment, then gently replied, okay. I give up, you win. And with that, he kissed me again. Later, we fell asleep in each other's arms. All the traveling had me out like a light the moment my head hit the pillow. When I woke up, it was already past noon. Half asleep, I reached to the side. Nobody there. My heart skipped a beat. I opened my eyes to find him sitting quietly on the floor by the bed. Just as I was about to call out to him, I saw he had those cards in his hand. My heart sank. I wondered how I should tell him about it. After gathering my thoughts, I got up, went over, and hugged him from behind. Where'd these come from? His voice was cold, almost unfamiliar. It made me shiver. I froze. England. I paused, took a deep breath. They're from your mom's place. He looked up at me, emotions swirling in his eyes. After a while, it was like he figured something out. He tossed the cards aside. So, she remembers me but just doesn't want to come back, he said, suddenly standing up, a trace of self-mockery in his voice. I stood up too, looking at him closely. Seeing his forced smile, his pretense of indifference, broke my heart. She doesn't remember, I said. He looked at me confused, then smiled bitterly after a few seconds. Doesn't matter, she's gone anyway. I wanted so badly to hug him at that moment, my lips trembling. She lost her memory. When she remembered you, she drew these cards. Her memory stopped at when you were little. She didn't forget you, she just lost her memory. Tears started rolling down my cheeks as I spoke. Who are you kidding? Edward abruptly got agitated. Kathy, I don't need your pity. Edward, I rushed over to hug him, crying uncontrollably, I'm not lying. She remembered everything, remembered you were in China, and couldn't wait to go find you. She was in a car accident on her way to the airport. At that moment, he stood there frozen in my embrace. The silent air heightened my understanding of his shock and grief. I gently stroked his back, feeling heartbroken. Suddenly, he turned away and didn't speak anymore. After what seemed like forever, he said hoarsely, What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. He pried my hands off and headed for the kitchen. I watched his calm back, feeling a deep sadness. Anything. I followed him into the kitchen. There wasn't much there. When he said he'd make something, it was really just boiling some egg noodles. He boiled the water. It was bubbling over at the pot, yet he didn't add the noodles. He seemed lost in thought, just staring at it. Edward, the water's boiling. I called out, but he didn't respond. He was unexpectedly calm after hearing the news. I thought he'd cry, and I was worried about how to comfort him. Turns out I had nothing to worry about. He was stronger than I imagined. Edward, I called him again. He snapped back to reality, pulling out some noodles. How much can you eat? Is this enough? Enough. I looked at him, wanting to say more but couldn't. His movements were a bit awkward as he cooked the noodles. When they were done, he put them in front of me. I'm going downstairs to get a pack of cigarettes. With that, he went to change his shoes. I followed, saying calmly, I thought you'd quit since you didn't smoke yesterday. Yeah, I did quit, he said while putting on his shoes, then looked back at me. Stay here and wait for me. Okay. With a click, the door was shut. I sat at the table, feeling too heavy-hearted to eat anything. After quite a while, he still hadn't returned. My worry grew. I changed into my shoes and went to look for him. When I got to the elevator, I thought of something and stepped back, heading into the stairwell instead. As soon as I opened the door, smoke filled the air. He was standing there with his back to me, smoking. I glanced down at the pile of cigarette butts and couldn't help but frown. Edward, I called softly. He turned around, surprised to see me. "Stop smoking," I said, walking over to take the cigarette from his hand, then clasped his hand tightly. He stared at me, a bit dumbfounded. I stood on tiptoe, giving him a gentle kiss. But he turned his face away. "Don't kiss me, I just smoked." "Smoke's gonna choke you." "I still want to," I insisted. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with a trace of emotion. He sighed and bent down to kiss me. The smoke was harsh, making my eyes water. He let go and gently patted my back, trying to comfort me. "I told you to stop kissing me." "But I want to." I looked up at him. "Edward, I don't want you to be sad alone. Seeing you sad breaks my heart. Can you stick with me? Don't come here alone anymore." He paused for a moment, then reached out to touch my head, pulling me tightly into his arms. "Okay. Edward, I'll never leave." I nestled my face into his chest. "All right." His voice was a little choked. "Edward, let's get married." Saying that was unexpected, the boldest I'd ever been. But seeing him smoking alone in the hallway, so lonely and desperate, all I could think was that. He stiffened and was silent for a long time before finally saying one word, "Okay." Then he bent down to kiss me again. He kissed me until I couldn't stand straight, picked me up, and walked us home. I woke up in the middle of the night and, by moonlight, looked at him asleep beside me, his brow furrowed. I gently tapped his brow, and he slowly relaxed. I kissed his forehead softly. "I love you." "What? Still awake? You want to get sick?" He pulled me back into his arms. "Going to sleep now?" I didn't dare move. He kissed my forehead. "Sleep tight. We're getting our marriage license in the morning." "In the morning?" "What?" Having second thoughts. "No, but isn't that a bit fast?" He just kissed me again. "If we don't hurry, and you run off overseas, where will I find a wife?" You're the one for me, okay?" "All right."